coax them into doing something. You know, whether or not you're double-clicking an exe or a PDF or, you know, whatever you're doing to compromise the system. The spear phishing attack, I'll explain that, definitely help you out. The web attacks, this is probably my favorite aspect of the social engineering toolkit. The web attack vectors, pretty dangerous. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. The malicious payload, malicious USB, DVD, and CD. Really simple, basic attack, but it'll definitely grow over time. This is new in version 0.5. But it'll automatically create a auto-run based USB, DVD, or CD for you, so that you can distribute them, and then when they go and insert their computer, it drops a Metasploit payload and they compromise it. So again, all around social engineering. So new in version 7.05, which is my favorite version right now. Well, I guess there is one version. But the credential harvester. I'm going to show you a quick example of this one. And by the way, set is in backtrack. By default, it's under the /pentest/exploit/set, and it's actually all cap letters in there. So it's uppercase set. First thing you want to do when you get set, if you're using just the standard version of the backtrack, is you want to update it. And similarly to Metasploit, you just type in SVN update. And that will go and pull down the latest version of set for you. Now to run set, let's type in set. Now set is a menu-driven tool. So if you notice and you're familiar with Fast Track, the interactive mode is pretty much the same thing as this. I prefer menu-driven, type attack vector. Command lines get confusing. So when I program set, I did it from this method. And so set, we'll go through the web attack vector first, and the credential harvester. This is specifically for if you're targeting an organization and you can get people to click a link or a browser or your site. A lot of times what I'll do it for, is entice a victim, either through calling them up or it integrates with an EtherCap and a bunch of other things in order to get them to click on your site and compromise you. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the site cloner. And here's where the attack starts to get potentially dangerous. So what you can do is you can clone any website you want to on the internet. So let's pick on Google. And we're going to do the credential harvester method. So you see here I selected the site cloner. I clicked on the credential harvester method. And then we're going to go ahead and clone Gmail. So cloned it, and all we do is hit enter. So this is my attacker machine. So I have a Python-based web server running that will handle all the requests for us. Now, to show you what's going to happen is somehow I entice a victim. Again, either you email them or some other method. And we're going to go to this website. Now you see, it loaded up pretty quickly. We have a website here that looks exactly like Gmail, right? You need every indication that it is Gmail. Type in my username. I type it in, I hit enter. And if you look here, that's weird, brought me back to Google, okay? And if you look at the top here, where am I? Google. I'm at Google. However, on our other end, it harvested all of our credentials for us. So you can see here I got my username field, and I got my password field. So that's nice. Now when you control C out of here, it will export automatically a report format for you. So it'll do HTML-based formatting and also do XML-based formatting. So if you want to create a tool off of it, go right ahead. But what's nice about this is if you're doing a mass phishing attack against someone and you get, say, 50 people, it is multi-threaded, so it will handle multiple connections and things like that, it'll generate a nice report for you. And I'll just show you a really quick output of that report. So it generates a nice report for us. So you can see here, it'll show you, it gives you a little definition of the social engineering toolkit, the report format, and then it shows everything in here. So you can see the email and the password field. These are all the post parameters. The set tries to do a good job of determining what the username and password fields are and highlight those for you, but again, it's not perfect, so I include all of the post parameters in there for you. Now you can see that line down here. There's where you can see multiple users, breaking on different ones, so I'll be able to harvest it all for you. Pretty slick. So one important aspect about set is the configuration file. I get a lot of questions like, well, hey, if I'm using, set, when I was doing that attack, set automatically detected my IP address and put it into the tool for me. There's a lot of times where you might have multiple interfaces, and you might have a public IP address on one and your internal on the other, and it uses whatever internet connection to get out to the internet. So you can configure it manually, and it's all done through the set config file. And it's the most important, probably, aspect of customizing set in the tool. And that's under config/set_config. And you go there, and here it'll, a few different options. You have the Metasploit path. It does integrate into Ettercap, so if you wanted to do DNS poisoning of the entire, if you're on the internal network, you can do DNS cache poisoning. And so whenever they go to browse Google, it actually goes to your malicious set, and they never know the difference. So you just have to turn that on. It also integrates into SendMail. By default, Backtrack has SendMail installed on it. So from a SendMail perspective, you just turn that on, and then you can actually spook source addresses, things like that into it. The web attack email, in that prior example that you saw here, when I was actually going through and doing the credential harvesting, if you turn this on, and we'll go ahead and do that, it'll actually allow you to send emails after the site has been created. So you create your malicious site, you clone everything, you turn your web attack email on, it'll then prompt you to, if you want to send an email out to a bunch of people. Now you can do a mass email, single email addresses, whatever you want to. I won't get into the self-sign applet yet. And here's the auto detect. This is where you turn that off if you didn't want it to automatically detect your IP address. Just turn it off, and then you can enter in whatever you want to. So let's do that same exact attack we just did before. So we're going to do the web attack, site cloner, credential harvester. We're going to clone Gmail. Someday. And if you see here, we're now prompted for passwords. So we can send a single email address or a mass email. The specific format is, just username by email address by email address. So email address, enter, email address, enter, email address, enter, etc. So we'll send it to my email address. And here you can either it integrates into Gmail, so if you have a Gmail account, it'll send it from there. Or if you want to use your own relay server, so for example, you have an SMTP server, it provides both credentials or anonymous. If you had SendMail here, it automatically prompted for a SendMail email as well. But we'll just go ahead and use Gmail. We'll use my email address. So it will go through and send the email for us. And if you go back to our email account here, so I'm definitely going to check this website out because it says, dude, you have to check it out. And then that's where I got it locked out. Okay. I'm not going to actually put my username and password there. But hey, I'm actually authenticated already, so it just redirects me back to Gmail like I was normally there. Cool. And on the back end, I get all of the credentials harvested. So, whatever you can figure out a way to coax somebody into clicking your site is obviously a good thing. So that was new in 4.5. Now, one attack I want to talk about is the Java applet attack, and that's probably my favorite one. And the reason being is everybody traditionally on their Windows system, or Linux or OS X, has Java installed, right? I mean, Java is a pretty integral component of the internet. So with Java, there's this awesome non-vulnerability, as they call it, where you can create a Java applet, self-sign it to whatever you want to, and then when a victim goes to browse that site, it's going to say, hey, Microsoft is trying to have you run this Java applet. Do you trust them? Well, of course we're going to trust Microsoft. I would, right? Or Google, or China. So we're going to turn this self-signed Java applet on. What that's going to do is by default, the Java applet will be signed by Microsoft. Sorry, Microsoft. And then if you want to spoof it to somebody else like Google or whomever, just turn this on and you can specify it. We'll turn the web config off, the web attack off, as you get the idea. If you send emails to individuals, you can get them to click on it. So we'll do the website attack vector, we're going to clone a site again, and we're going to do the Java applet attack method. I lost my internet. No. So, what's your first name? Just say Google. Okay, so we just created our self-signed Java app, but we're going to clone google.com. And here's where we start to get into the payload selection. Now, what I've done with set is I've incorporated pretty much every Metasploit attack you can possibly imagine into set as well, the payload creation, everything else, to get around antivirus. And it's funny because when I presented at ShroomCon and I released this, they released like 6 signatures for my tool. So I obfuscated everything to hell, so everything that set does is completely random and unique. And so it gets past all of them now. So just to make sure antivirus companies, good job. Yeah. So we're going to select our default, which is going to be interpreter. And we're going to use the default. Now, in version set.05, I took calculator.exe, calc.exe, and what I found was if you're going to codecave or do that backdoor, the -K or whatever, if you're using command type applications like ping or something that revolves around being inside a command prompt, what will happen is the way that Metasploit injects its payload into it, the user would get a pop-up that looks like a blank command shell. Well, obviously, that would probably be a good indicator that something not good is happening. I don't know, probably not. People would just be like, oh, I got to minimize that. I mean, I'm sure the website needed that. I wouldn't. So what I did was I found that things that don't use console applications, like calc.exe, for example, is a specific GUI. If you codecave those and you don't specify the -K flag, nothing is ever presented to the user ever. So I don't want the executable to run properly, but I also don't want any type of console application. So what I did was I took calc.exe, I foobarred it a bit so that the calc wouldn't load, and then whenever you generate a backdoor, it does that. Currently, none of the antivirus vendors are picking this up, so you pretty much have a 0 out of 42 clip, which is a good thing. Okay. And I'm just going to hit enter. So we're going to use the default, but you can do multi-encoder. Multi-encoder will Shikata Guy-nate it. It'll alpha encode it. It'll Shikata Guy-nate it again and do a bunch of other encodings to try to get around antivirus if you didn't want to do the binary. You can also specify your own encoding if you want to, whatever you really want to do. We can also enter the port here. So I'll just use the default, which is 443. But you can specify whatever port you want the actual payload listener to be running on. So it's encoded. Now, one thing about this attack is it's not only for Windows. It does work on Linux and it does work on OS X, so it's multi-platform. So based off of what you're browsing at, your user agent, it'll say, oh, hey, you're Linux, okay, I'm going to shoot you over this payload. Or hey, you're Mac, I'm going to shoot you over this payload. Or hey, you're Windows, I'm going to shoot you over a whole bunch of payloads. So we're not going to do those right now. By the way, if anybody has any questions, I'm going through this, feel free. So we got our payload handler through Metasploit. It should look familiar, right? One thing I did add is it automatically does migrate. So when you go and exploit this, it will migrate to a different process. So if the user does close the browser, you're still okay. Gotta make sure about that. Yeah. So we'll go and browse to our website. Now, first time you load this, it can be a little slow because it doesn't cache it the very first time. But afterwards, it's very fast.